Welcome to Bay Rats and Buoys Season 2 with your host, Captain Gaige.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Bay Rats and Buoys. I'm your host, Captain Gaige. This is episode number 46, Season 2, On the Boat. Brought to you in part by Cito Huntington. Are you a member? Visit Cito.com and join today. Fisherman Magazine, my favorite magazine to get in the mail. And Clicks Fueling. Visit clicksfueling.com. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. I'm back on the boat. It feels good. A little windy today, but sitting in the sun here, blue skies. It's beautiful out. It's gorgeous. Great day to be down here. Great way to bring in Labor Day weekend. You know, that's what's coming, so that brings some things to a close for people. The boating season does slow down for some now, and others like myself, this is where it really ramps up. So, I mean, we're super busy with charters this whole week into next, and the fishing is phenomenal. Really is. And Saturday morning's charter, we got on some nice fish. And yesterday, and the reason I bring up Saturday was such a crazy day. Remember Friday was that black moon that we had that you get every 29 months. And it's like the opposite of a lunar eclipse. And, you know, it brings with it strong currents, high tides, and just like any other, new moon. And it was absolutely insanity on the water on Saturday. It was complete chaos. In a good way and in a bad way. I mean, there was some crazy calls going on. It was just insane. It was the busiest and craziest day of the year so far, hands down. And yesterday's charter starts off with, weak fish in the bay, which was awesome. So it's great when you bring guests out to go fishing and bottom fish for porgy, fluke, black sea bass, and, you get some nice alternative species in the mix to bycatch. And it was great to get keeper weak fish and keeper fluke in the bay. And, that's this late season fluke bite, and it's awesome. It really is. So we had a great trip yesterday, a lot of fun. But like I said, Saturday was absolutely insanity out there. Call after call after call. The VHF radio was so busy. Channel 16, it was nonstop all day. I want to say there were like 2 or 3 boats taking on water at the same time where we were all talking to one another, even next to the boats, out there, and saying that, there's multiple calls going on right now. And, you heard the different locations, and we're each scrambling to different ones, and it was absolutely crazy. So, I mean, and then the night topped off with, helicopter searches. I mean, it was like, when I tell you, it was something out of a movie Saturday. It really was. And if you were down here and you heard what was going on the radio, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not going to rehash all the calls and everything that happened, but it was just a crazy day in general. And I'm going to blame the moon, like we always do. Now, I got, it's blowing 10 sustained out of the west right now, so that's why I'm faced a different direction. Wind's at my back. And hopefully we won't pick up too much of that noise in the mic, and we never do. So I say that, though, because who knows? This might be the week that I hear Hurricane Gaige in the mic. So hoping that's not the case. I left the studio to come here. I was in the studio early morning radio shows and getting all that content out and done, and I'm like, I'm going to do the podcast on the boat. I'm not doing it again last week. So last week, GoPro 13 failed. Here I was looking at 13 for 90% of the time, I want to say 65% of the time. Then it shut off, and GoPro 12 that's running next to it. So that's why last week it looked like I had a lazy eye and I'm looking at the wrong camera. I'm watching it back and I'm going, do I go down and do it again tomorrow on the boat? And I was just like, nah, we'll put it out there. 45 is, I know why 45 was like 45 on the camera. So we got to figure out why that GoPro 13 is overheating or at least shutting down. So that's not fun when you're on the boat and you're filming. And everybody that has GoPros knows exactly what I'm talking about. This happens to everybody. And speaking about something that happens to everybody, last week I talked about getting your ass kicked on the boat and all the different things that happened. I think it was the week before episode, and then ironically, we had the tragedy, the accident with Captain Joey Leggio, and he hurt his hand, fell off the boat, hit the prop, and, I talked about that in last week's episode. But I got to say, the number one thing getting your ass kicked on your boat is usually on the dock, kicking a cleat of some sort. I've kicked them with my sneakers on. I'm flip-flops from May until mid-October, almost till Halloween. I'm in flip-flops. That's it. That's all I wear. I don't put sneakers on unless I'm going to a wedding. Even then, I wear my, my dress sneakers. I don't put it on dress shoes even. So that's why I'm happy to be able to just wear my own clothing, my own Sand City shirt or the tournament shirt. And you guys see, I threw on the Tom and Jerry shirt to spice things up. That's not true. But point being is everybody gets their ass kicked on a boat, but I got to say the number one thing that causes the most pain is going to be the cleat on the dock. How many times have we kicked the cleat on the dock and jumped around like idiots holding our foot in the air, screaming and hollering? And, man, I've done some doozies. I mean, when I tell you I've kicked that cleat hard to the point where now I look out for them. I don't want to do that again. I thought for sure I broke my toe. I thought for sure my big toe was broken. But it wasn't the case. So hopefully you guys, you throw them in the comments there. If you're a real big Bay Rats and Buoys fan, the only thing that I'll ask from you guys is to smash a few more like buttons and get in on some interaction, even on Facebook. If you're in the Facebook groups, let me know what your how you've gotten your ass kicked by your vessel in one way or another. So this is the best time of the year for me, personally. The weather is great. The fishing, it's fishing on the entire spectrum because you got all species, and as soon as the tog kick in, then it's really all species, and you know what I mean. So we had an amazing season for the striped bass. Bluefish, Fluke, I'm going to give it an It's okay. Right now, guys are catching keeper fluke out in 70 and 80 feet of water. You got to go deeper late season. That's the best time to hit the deeper waters in the late season right now. And you'll get some keeper fluke. We got keeper fluke this weekend right here in the Bay. Just yesterday. It wasn't even the weekend. It was midweek. And there was nobody out there. It was great. So we had the whole place to ourselves. We fished some great areas. And we caught everything. Black sea bass, porgy, fluke. They did get one sea robin. They got one. So it's not like we were on bird sanctuaries the whole time. Not at all. And weak fish, bluefish, and croakers. We were catching spot out there. And those are great. So we keep those. We keep those for bait. And we do have a couple of striped bass trips coming up this weekend, so we'll get out there and get on the bass. We did throw a live croaker out there like 1 or 2 charters ago, and it was getting bit in half by the blues. And then I got a call during the Wick tournament. It was Sunday morning, and Peter and Travis reached out. I had a late Saturday night. Like I said, Saturday was crazy here, so I had a long day. I was 13 hours on the water. And got home, I was exhausted, so I didn't get up early Sunday morning, and they were texting me early because they were out fishing for the tournament. But I was able to contribute and send them intel of where we were getting blues on Saturday, and they went over to that area and said that got them the biggest blues. That area was holding the biggest bluefish that we saw in our area. And that was great to, be able to contribute and throw them on some fish by, drawing on the chart exactly where to go and showing them. And they went and did it and executed. So good job by you guys, Peter and Travis. Great job. And while we're talking about the blues, look at this back-to-back. I remember the name because I said it last year on the podcast for the Wick tournament that you had Eric Auer, the winner of the Wick tournament last year. Well, guess who got first place again this year? In fact, it was Eric Auer, but in fact, I had mentioned to Teddy and a bunch of other people that it's always somebody in the Peconic. It's 2 places. It's Peconic or it's out east, Connecticut, eastern Connecticut. And you see the leaderboard. Peconic, Connecticut. That's it. So Guys west of us have their hands in the throwing their hands in the air, going, we got to do something else as far as the WIC tournament, and maybe that they got to change their date. There was so many things being talked about in all the different groups, and it's because of the guys in the west saying that it's always somebody way out east. So how do you handle that? What do you do? Now, as somebody that threw a tournament this year, there's a lot of thought that has to go into these things, so. And I'm sure some ideas have been thrown into the hat, for sure. But let's see, They always get some wacky weather. I was out there filming on Saturday with my phone. I'll put some of the footage up here. I mean, it was choppy. It was choppy out in the Sound on Saturday. They always get rough weather for that tournament. And this is the first year, I got to say, in the last 7 that I didn't even register to be in the tournament. Because I had such a busy schedule. I wasn't going to have any time to get out there. And it really wasn't even a matter of the wind and the weather. Had the wind and weather been perfect, yeah, maybe I would have snuck out midnight Friday. I would have been able to get out in certain windows and really, taken some of my sleep time away. Which, listen, for fishing, we all do it. You all know what I mean. And, we call it the grind. We all lose hours of sleep. We're tossing and turning the night before a big fish, trip. You're going offshore. Kory's not getting any sleep. And, that's what we do. We grind it out. We have 7 months here on Long Island. When I say to somebody we have 7 months of boating, they're like, we don't have 7 months of boating. I don't put my boat in until the end of June. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but you're not hardcore like us. We're April 15th, we are on the bass. April 7th, we're out there prospecting, catching bass, looking for them, finding them, catching them. And then on the 15th, we have charters going out. We're putting people on bass. It's every year. And they're here. Every year they're here. And it's very consistent. And this year, I got to say, it was the best year ever. So I'm waiting to see what the fall run does, because the fall runs are always different. They're not always anything like we had in the springtime in May, June. I tell people now that come on the boat, we're going to catch striped bass. Now we're going to go out. We're going to look for them. We'll catch them. But is it going to be as hot as it is in May and June as far as the fishing and the numbers of what you're going to catch? Absolutely not. But we look forward to this time of the year because of the species that we get to catch. You're going to have this is the weekend when you can start to be on the lookout for the Albies, and the false albacore will be here. They show up as early as Labor Day, so now's a good time of the year to keep your eye out for them. See that splashing around. So the albacore, right now you got here Spanish mackerel and bonito. They're in, so you can catch those now. And obviously all the other species we talked about. And then moving into the fall with the tog and everybody that's addicted to the blackfish season. And, there are some charter boats, that I know in the area that really only go out for blackfish. They're set up at their spot lock. They're ready to go, but they're not out there fishing with us like we fish for the striped bass. So that's really our specialty, is getting on the bass. And we love when the blues are the bycatch and that top water action. Obviously, there's nothing better than it. So, when you see the Albies, you get a couple of shots at them, and we're hoping with side scan this year, it's really going to help us out to stay on them and follow them. The other advice I can give you is look for the birds that are working with them. Look for the lead bird. Follow that lead bird. He's going to keep you on the fish. He's usually the lead bird for a reason, and he's keeping the rest of the flock of the birds. He's following the fish where they're going, and everybody's kind of following him. So if that makes sense to you, keep an eye out for that. And, we get a lot of people asking. It's so funny. We just talked about it in one of the tackle shops that, people ask if if they can get a captain on their boat to teach them how to fish on their boat and take them to, the fishing grounds and fishing areas and where to look and how to do this. And yes, the answer is yes. That is a possibility. 100%. But you're hiring a captain. You're paying him an hourly wage. And most of the times you're not paying him hourly, you're paying him for his experience. So a lot of people, there's a few ways to look at it. So this past weekend, the WIC tournament, first year I wasn't in it, and the winner for the second year in a row, if I'm not mistaken, the leaderboard, if you look at it on a phone, if you look at past leaderboards on a phone, it doesn't come up the way it would on a computer. I looked at it on my phone, and I saw both years, last 2 years, 24 and 25, Eric Auer was number 1, and then I even looked at 23, where I think Eric had placed 10th. So he's always in there. He's in the mix, and we love it, Eric, because you are representing New York on that leaderboard up against all those guys from Connecticut. So we're rooting for you. Great job again. So congratulations. And I hope you passed the lie detector test. I hope you were not over the declaration line like I heard last year, some controversy and whatnot. Anyway, all good stuff. The season's going strong. You know, the tuna bite has been on fire. I think it was last week, within the last week and 10 days, you know, around the storm when we had Erin. Everybody was wondering what that was going to do for it. Well, from what I'm hearing, it helped out because it was like a petting zoo out there. Guys were catching wahoo, bluefin, yellowfin, and all the pelagic species out there, which is always, you know, for me, it's great to hear. Kory went out. Now, what did I say? What did I say last week? Get out there, check those mooring lines because somebody's boat's going to, you know, take a dump. Get out there, check your bilge because somebody hasn't been out to their boat in a while. And I also said to check your lines because the lines are going to chafe. And you're not going to believe this when I say it, but Kory had his dinghy. Now, this is different, but it still had to do with lines chafing, and away went the dinghy. So, due to the transmission failure on one of his quads that they dump it into the water off the beach with, they had gotten rid of that quad. Now, they left the dinghy on the beach, anchored and tethered up to the beach while the line broke, and the dinghy was halfway across the bay in another town. And he got a call from the police letting him know where his dinghy was, and he went out there to get it. And what did I tell you? People's lines are going to break, and their boats are going to get on the beach. And who did it happen to? My mate. Way to go, Kory. Anyway, he said he had checked the lines and looked at them, and they were fine. Well, obviously, that was not the case. They were not fine. They broke, and the dinghy went onto the beach. So then, while he's coming back from getting his dinghy, he's sending me a picture that the police are sitting on a mooring with a boat that sunk. Now, here you go. Told you the high winds were coming. Told you to get out there and check your bilges. Somebody's battery was dead. Somebody's bilge was not working. The boat had already taken on water, and during the storm, down it went. And that's just right here in the local area. And now I don't expect everybody to be listening to Bay Rats and Buoys and taking the advice. You know? But if you share this podcast with your friends, along the way, there's going to be something that I say that is going to benefit you and help you in the boating community. Whether it be a product that I recommend to you, and I will recommend a product today, and I've recommended it before, and I had to go recently get it, and nothing compares to it. And I was over talking to Teddy on, now I posted pictures in last week's podcast of Teddy's spot that had gotten bit in half by the bluefish. So I'm sitting there talking to him, and he's going through his whole boat, which is something we all do all the time. We take stuff out of our compartments, we dry them out, we air it out, we clean it up, and we put stuff back and we reorganize it. So he has one of his compartments open, and I see a ton of rust. And I'm like, you're not going to believe this, but you got to go get the rust remover from West Marine. It's $15, spray bottle in the cleaning aisle with all the cleaning supplies. And it's a white bottle, and it says West Marine rust remover. And it is absolutely the best stuff you can use. There's nothing better. I sprayed it on a couple of things here. I didn't even have to wipe it down. I didn't wipe it down, and away went the rust any way you spray it. And if you ask me, it's a great product. I recommended to you my Yeti bag because, you know, I love my Yeti bag. I got my Diet Cokes in there now. My trusted Yeti bag is right here by my feet. I might have to dive in and get a Diet Coke and show that off to you, no doubt. But like I said, every week we're going to recommend products, some fishing gear, some new stuff that you could use, and, you know, what fish you're targeting and what you're going after these days. So this week, I got to say, we were impressed that we were catching keeper-size weak fish and keeper fluke right here in the bay. So there you go, late season. And it was great to see. And now it's time. This is when we turn on and we go for the Albies. We look for the Albies, and we're going for the Spanish Max and the bonito. And we're all tied up for those before we leave the dock because, man, when I tell you, when you see those working and you're on them, you don't have much time to really sit around and tie up a rig and get ready and throw into them. The minute you see them, you better have the right length leader on and the right leader and right fluorocarbon because you're only going to have one shot at them until they disappear. And like I said, you follow that lead bird. So if you see the birds working on them, you follow that lead bird. That lead bird's going to stay on the lead fish, and he's going to follow them the whole time. So that's going to help you out, no doubt. And I know this year it's going to help us out with side scan, so we're pretty excited about that. No doubt about the technology is going to help us, and we're excited to use it. So, and we will definitely be putting the radar in bird mode a little bit more come the fall. We tested it out in the springtime. There weren't that many flocks of birds working. We were able to find the fish without them. And speaking of finding the fish, it was great to see Matt out here. What was that? That was Tuesday? Monday or Tuesday, Matt was down here. And, it was Tuesday. So that was yesterday. It was great to see him. And he got out there, and there were cocktail blues everywhere. And it's funny. He said they were exactly where we were catching them on our last charter. And it was interesting. He said anywhere around that area, you will find in the cocktail blues. But then if you move to another part of the sound, you will finding 10-pounders. And, 10, 11, and 12-pound bluefish. So a little bit bigger. And we got on those when we saw them, biting the croakers in half. So we were putting out croakers. They were getting bit in half. We were even putting a teaser hook now on the back because we knew the blues were there. And we were doing a little bit of both, We kept the circle hooks on because we really were hoping to get the bass. And that's always the case. We're looking for the bass. And, if we're hunting the blues, you could use the J-hooks. No doubt about it. Always better to use. And, man. What are we at? All right. Not bad. Camera hasn't overheated and shut off. It's a little cooler out here today. 22 minutes into episode 46. And the ice that's in here is ice from yesterday. So I got my Diet Cokes, and the ice is from yesterday. Now, that's only because I didn't put a bag of ice in here yet today or take the ice from the freezer. And I make a ton of trays of ice. And it's easy to fill it up real fast. And it lasts all day long. This way I don't have to spend $3 or $2. It's we get them $2 a bag of ice. It ain't the end of the world. But it's a necessity in the summertime. Here's to you guys catching fish. And this has become a joke. I hear this all the time now. When everybody says they're going to bring or give me something, they're like, we're bringing you Diet Cokes. And they know. Somebody dropped off like a case of beer to the office. And I was like, you obviously don't watch the podcast. But it was nice because I'll give that to somebody else. But I'm not one for having alcoholic beverages on the boat. We have a lot of soft drinks and waters for the guests and for kids. And speaking of kids on the boat, I can't begin to tell you how many people show up with nothing. Now, we talked about it yesterday. Me and Kory, I was like, Kory, did you see how great yesterday's mom was? She had sandwiches made in plastic containers. They had snacks, they had drinks, they had everything you could possibly imagine. And they didn't show up with, 17 knapsacks. And then we get people that come on the boat, and they're like, do you happen to have any water? And we're like, of course we have water. It's on the ice in the cooler up front, And, people get on the boat, they don't have anything. That happens more than you could imagine. It really does. So, I don't know. Me having the Yeti, I stop, I pack it up, I load it up for the day, and, we'll go over what's in my daily bag. I've already mentioned to you, you got to have the binoculars. Those are huge. Having binoculars on the water is big, especially when you hear a pond call from the Coast Guard that they, looking for a boat, and they're putting out an all stations alert. And you could look around in your vicinity like they were doing it yesterday. They were asking somebody in Oyster Bay if they saw a boat that was in distress. They were asking for any boaters in that area. And, having a pair of binoculars to look at them is, look around, check your area and see, holy cow, yeah, there's a boat that you normally wouldn't have seen that's in trouble, that needs help. So I always got in my bag. So one day I'll take everything out of the bag and show everything that's in there besides, the glasses and all the other good stuff. And now everybody's getting cameras in their glasses, and you don't know who's recording you now. We usually have a GoPro running on the boat. Past couple of trips, I've been slacking on the GoPro and, really enjoying the time out there and not worrying about making these videos and getting crazy yet, because I'm going to do that stuff, a lot of it in the off season. I only showed the airplane video taken off in a podcast episode. I haven't even put that stuff on social media yet. Got some cool race boats going by, shooting rooster tails out. And last year we saw the Navy. The Navy came in. When they came through the sound and went around us, you knew that was military boats. That was not. And even the formation they were in, they were flying so close together, you thought they were the Blue Angels. When I tell you there was like a foot, 12 to 24 inches between the boats going top speed. I mean, they were so close together. It was incredible. And maybe they weren't that close. It just appeared to be that close. So we took some cool pictures. But, there's always something cool to see out there. There really is. And speaking of cool things and cool people, big shout out to all the Facebook admins that share the podcast. Now I'm going to go ahead and ask any of the Bay Rats and Buoys fans to go ahead and share the podcast in your feed. Put it into your feed. Let your fishing buddies see it. And because we got a lot of really big things going on. We're going to start doing some giveaways. We have to. Coming into the first anniversary of Bay Rats and Buoys every week now. We're only 6 weeks away. So 6 weeks away from the 1 year anniversary. So we'll do 5 weeks. At the 5 week mark, we'll start giving away products here. And we're going to do a product review of new stuff every week. Excited to bring that to you. And I'll also share some of the cool stuff that's going on at J&M Seafood. I told Matt yesterday that I'm going to get over there and do some filming to show you guys. And it's just a matter of time before we have some really big and good news to share with you regarding J&M Seafood. And super excited for him. He's got a lot of great things going on. But, like I said, I don't like to be the one that preempts stuff and tells you, and then something doesn't come to fruition, and now I told you about it, it didn't happen. And so I wait. I can usually give you, some details in the beginning before something really comes to fruition. Like, we told you there's construction going on in the studio, so come the colder weather, you're going to see what we did in the studio and, what we're creating as far as growing and the boat show and all the hard work we're putting in behind the scenes. And really cool. So it's an awesome time of the year. And yes, I'm loving the new truck, so thank you, Empire Chevrolet of Huntington, Porsche, Mike the manager, and David Cohen. You guys were awesome. Told you I'm going to say it every week. When good things happen, I have good things to say about you. Right? Well, there you have it. And just so happens to be that I picked a really good time to get down here because the wind totally died down. I don't think it would matter which way I'm facing, but I did want to block the mic a little bit, and it really seems to be working. Manny from the West. The West is best. And so I mentioned about the tuna and the wahoo and the bluefin and the yellowfin and all the great things. They were tripping over them out there. I mean, there were guys out there that had a petting zoo going on. And, I'll even shout out Andrew and the boys over at East End Anglers. And you will see them on the podcast once we coordinate all that fun stuff. They have a lot of stuff going on. But it's nice to see you guys posting the pictures. And they've been on a solid tuna bite. I got to see Ethan out at Montauk because they were working. So Andrew wasn't on the boat for the Montauk Canyon Challenge, but we did see Ethan out there, which was pretty cool. And the tuna bite goes on now. Now's a great time for chunking into September and October. It is absolutely a great time to go chunking for tuna. I know guys that are going this weekend from this area. They're launching their boat out of Montauk. I was talking to them yesterday. It's a single engine. They're going 30 miles offshore there in Montauk and going to go try to get on the tuna bite. They were here in our area looking to catch spot and catch live bait for their trip Sunday. And that was good to see. Love to hear it. And we are going to go hunting the Albies, the bonito, and the Spanish mackerel just to change it up a little bit. You know, we don't like to, me and Kory like to do that when we bring the charter back. We're done. We get, everybody's off the boat. We clean up, and then, boom, we go back out. That's when we go on our prospecting trips and go do some really cool, different stuff. On the charters, it's a little bit different. You know, it's you got to keep the rods bending, keep people entertained. So that's usually that's our focus. But you're going to see some current footage and some things happening in the local area where we're going to make our rounds and get over to the Spanish Max, the bonito, and the false albacore. And I will show you in videos that I will make that day while we're hunting them what we're using to catch them. And can't wait. It's that time of the year. The bait is big. The spearing here, they're much bigger in the area. Big, you know, everything you can see. You throw the cast net, now you're getting good-sized bait. And the snappers still seem to be a little small, if I remember correctly. You know, usually the end of August, they were, you know, decent size as a kid. I asked the kids yesterday, I passed Northport Town Dock. I had to go back into Britannia, and I came out, and on my way out, I saw the kids fishing on the town dock. So I asked them, how big is a snapper? You know, how big are they? And I think we caught every size bluefish out there this weekend on the charter, and this past week, actually. You know, it was pretty cool. And that was just bottom fishing. And we weren't even targeting them, like, you know, specifically. And when we did put out croakers, they were getting bit in half. And so that seems to be the yellow-eyed demon's strategy. Bite the fish in half and don't go back for the second half because it has a hook in it. That's pretty smart. Anyway, what did the fluke have? The fluke had in its belly manta shrimp. And I got to tell you, those things look prehistoric. They look like, you know, remember Jumpin' Jack Flash talked about the prehistoric sea turtle, full-size sea turtle. Now, full-size sea turtle, you look it up, the age of them is incredible. And these manta shrimp were pretty big. And they were folded in half, like in a, you know, almost like in like an embryo type shape. And you opened them up and fold them up. They were pretty long. They were pretty big, and he had two of them in his belly that he had just eaten. They weren't even. I mean, they were probably alive an hour or so ago before we got them. And you know, it's always good when you're keeping stuff to fillet it for customers. See what's in the belly, you know, and see what they're eating, see what they're chewing on out there. So I don't know if any of you guys go out and match the manta shrimp hatch. You know, I don't know. I know I don't. That's for sure. Even guys asked me what I was using to catch croakers for bait. And we were using clam. Now, a lot of guys like to use fish bites. And they use the fish bites. But I got to tell you, with the clam, you chum a little bit. I don't think you're chumming with the fish bites. You chum with the clam, you attract a crowd, and you just start putting your chunks of clam down on those hooks, and before you know it, you're doubling up on spot. And you know, it's what we do. It's what we do to catch bait. So a lot of guys using the fish bites. We like to use the clam, and they will also eat spearing. So if we have a chicken rig down and it has 2 spearing on it, there's a good chance it's coming up at spot 2. And reached into the water a couple times. The water temperature's still nice and warm. And, yeah, the storm shook things up a little bit. Water's murky. I said last week, I put my hand here and said, this is how far visibility is. It's not even that far. It really isn't. You know, you see 6 inches of water in here, and you're lucky you can see the bottom when you're standing over 6 inches of water. And it is what it is. I can't wait until we get gin clear water in the fall and we can spearfish locally in a couple of areas that we're going to go target for the tog. I was telling somebody yesterday that you can keep a tog from the dock, and they were like, no way. And I was like, yeah, we'll prove it to you. So come this fall, we're going to prove it to a couple people and show you how it's done. And that's it, Episode number 46, and the sun kept it simple. Didn't get crazy. I didn't shout out a lot of people in this episode. And all I'm going to say now that we're closing out this episode is get involved in the interaction on these videos, especially on Facebook and YouTube. We're really going to start to grow those channels. Ginormous. We're about to explode and do some really cool stuff, which is why we're going to do the giveaways and give some expensive merchandise away. So hit us up in some of the comments there. And one of the questions I asked was, how did you get your ass kicked by your boat? I talked about the cleat on the dock. That is got to be, when you take a full swing with your foot and don't even know it's there, that's got to be one of the worst. It really is, without a doubt. Not to mention the hooks and the bleeding in your hands. That's just fishing. That's just nothing you could do. Nothing you could do. It's part of the game, part of the grind. We talk about it all the time. So next week, I'll show you guys some more merchandise and gear that we're going to use when we get out there prospecting, me and Kory. We'll show you what we're using to catch them, how we're doing it, and looking forward to it. We're looking forward to a good fall. I hope we have a great fall fishing-wise. I hope the weather holds out for us, that it's, it really is. It's up to Mother Nature how great it's going to be. That's what determines, how great. Early start to the season, weather sucked. Did we find windows? Did we get out? Thank God we did. That we weren't stuck doing a day job that we had to be at, that we couldn't get out because you had certain windows you had to go. So I get it. I understand why guys are out on the weekend because they got to work during the week. I understand. It makes sense. And this time of the year, you're going to see a lot less people going out now with the kids back to college, a lot less of the bow riders. You're going to see a lot less of that going on, and there's a lot more room out there for the fishing guys, which we love. So hopefully you come out and join us. Sand City Charter, you can always visit us at sandcitycharter.com. You can shoot me a message in the form there. I'm all over Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. You can get us on any of the social media feeds. You can download. So if you're listening to this audio version of Bay Rats and Buoys, I'm sitting on the boat making a video right now, so there is a video version on YouTube. That's why on YouTube you'll see the Bay Rats and Buoys logo with very little listenership to it because a lot of people are getting it on Spotify, Amazon Music, and all the iHeartRadio and Apple and all that fun stuff where they get their podcast. So there is a video version to this podcast if you're listening to just the audio version. And in the video version, I do put a lot of B-roll in. When I'm talking about stuff, you'll see what I'm talking about. Like when I say I was talking about last Saturday's weather for the Wick tournament, I'm actually going to show you what it was like out in the Long Island Sound on Saturday and show you the footage so you get an idea. And it was pretty choppy out there. There were not a lot of boats. I think we had, you can count them in the video, there was like 6 or 7 boats, maybe even 5 or 6 boats that were out in our area, in an area that's usually got 25 to 50 boats. So it was interesting to see how the weather took its toll on people and who really goes out when it's blowing. So there you have it, guys. Episode number 46. I can't believe we are 6 weeks away from the 1-year anniversary. I am Captain Gaige signing off. Wishing you guys bent rods, tight lines, and I will see you out on the water. Over and out.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Bay Rats and Buoys. Be sure to visit sandcitycharter.com and follow Captain Gaige on all our social media channels.